Good evening and welcome to our first edition of the Alumni Spotlight Series of 2021. My name is Dan McBride. I'm the Associate Vice President for Development and Alumni Engagement at Eastern Kentucky University. And I will be your host tonight as we continue our series of talking with some of our EKU alums from around the country and around the world who are doing some amazing things out in the community that they serve. And I want to promote a couple of things that are coming up before we get to tonight's show. We will do another spotlight coming up later this month on Tuesday, January 26th. Our next Alumni Spotlight series will feature Bill Kelly, Winchester native and EKU alum who is now in Florida and who is an actor. You may have seen him in Bloodline. He was in part of the 24 series on the Fox Network, has also done a lot of commercial work. We will talk about Bill Kelly and some of his acting gigs, as well as his time at EKU and growing up here in Central Kentucky. That is coming up on Tuesday, January 26th. I also want to let you know about some programming coming up next week. The Colonel's Kitchen, our second show of the year, will take place next week, and we have changed the date for that broadcast. Originally scheduled for next Wednesday, the 20th, we're going to do it a day early, and it will be a week from tonight, next Tuesday on the 19th of January, and that show will be at 8 p.m. So be sure to tune in for the Colonel's Kitchen next week. More information on this and all of our programming is available on the EKU alumni site at alumni.eku.edu, and we hope that you will join us. We also have some more things coming up in February. We'll be doing another Colonel Trivia Night, and we're going to have some more informative programming on maybe how to get into the stock market. We're going to talk about ancestry and some of those things. So a lot of programming coming up. We encourage you to keep checking the alumni page, watch your email and social media for more information on our upcoming programming. But tonight it is the Alumni Spotlight Series, and we are very pleased to have with us a distinguished guest. He is a graduate of EKU 1995 with a journalism degree and currently serving as the Vice President for External Affairs at Goodwill Industries of Kentucky, Mr. DeVone Holt. DeVone, welcome to the Alumni Spotlight Series.
It's great to be here, Dan. Really great to be here with you.
Happy New Year, and you are our first guest of 2021.
Look at that. Let's kick off this new year the right way. I love it.
Hey, we can't do any worse than 2020, right?
We cannot. Fingers crossed, right?
That's right. So, DeVone, if you would, I know a lot of folks have seen you in your role with Goodwill, but talk a little bit as Vice President for External Affairs, talk a little bit about kind of what your role is and what you do with Goodwill Industries.
Well, so I've been at Goodwill, Dan, for about a little shy of 2 years now. And in the role that I'm in, I oversee all of our external affairs. So that includes all of our fundraising, all of our government affairs, public relations, community relations, internal, external communications, marketing and advertising, and a lot of other duties as a side. and so
Well,
I joined. It's a four-headed team that leads Goodwill Industries of Kentucky. That includes so myself, our CEO, CFO, and our COO. And so it's a great job. Gives me an opportunity to use every skill I've ever acquired in my professional life. So it's pretty amazing.
well, and we're going to talk about your professional life, which has been pretty extensive, and I want to get into that. But talking a little bit more about Goodwill, I've really noticed as part of the current campaign is you guys are really trying to expand the information for exactly what Goodwill does. I think a lot of people have a preconceived notion of it, and you're trying to kind of teach them that you're more than maybe what they think it is.
That's absolutely right. So our CEO, she asked me to join the team, and I'm convinced, Dan, one of the reasons she wanted me to join the team because I have a really big mouth, and and she wanted me to use my big mouth to help the world understand that Goodwill was so much more than just our retail stores. There's so many people who've become familiar with Goodwill because of our retail stores. And as you would imagine, having, at least us here in Kentucky specifically, 66 retail stores, that's a great opportunity for people to interact with Goodwill and create their own experiences with Goodwill. But the reality is those retail stores actually fund the real mission of Goodwill Industries of Kentucky. And that mission is to help people with troubled backgrounds improve their lives through what we call the power of work, helping people find success in life through employment. And so we work with the hardest to serve job seekers in the market. These are people with disabilities, criminal backgrounds in some cases, addiction histories, little to no education, little to no workforce experience. And so we work with that population and help remove their barriers, help remove the barriers that prevent them from finding success in the workplace. And we use the resources in many cases, from our retail stores to fund that mission. So I tell people our retail stores are sort of like, I call them the goose that laid the golden eggs. That they provide us the resources to do the work that we do, but at the end of the day, they're really just a means to an end.
Well, you mentioned golden eggs, and one of your jobs is fundraising, and certainly everybody got the news before Christmas. Goodwill Industries got some great news from Mackenzie Scott Foundation.
We did. It was pretty incredible. It was almost too good to be true. In fact, in the beginning, it felt like too good to be true. The message came in to initially to our CEO, and she deleted it because it just seemed like one of those rich Nigerian princes who wanted to give you some money emails that you get through spam. And so she initially deleted it. And apparently by that time that we deleted that message at Goodwill, Mackenzie Scott's team had gone through this process of connecting with other nonprofits. Ultimately, she gave money to 384 nonprofit organizations. So by the time she got to us, apparently they were pretty familiar with the response that we had that, this can't be real, and had a whole strategy in place to convince us that it was real, to take the call. And the rest, as they say after that, Dan, is history. It was an amazing process, and what I probably would consider a once in a lifetime opportunity to have the richest woman in the world vet you in a way where you're not familiar with it. You don't know it's happening. She was doing it behind the scenes. We didn't have a clue it was happening. And after vetting us, she had determined and concluded that the work that we were doing was so meaningful and so impactful that she wanted to give us $10 million to spend however we wanted, in any way we wanted. And she only had one requirement of that $10 million donation. That requirement was simply that once a year for 3 years, we give her an annual report no more than 3 pages long.
Wow. I mean, you're right. I mean, it is almost too good to be true.
Yeah, it is. And so that was, I told our team, I'm going to retire now. It's the largest gift that Goodwill has ever received. And fortunately, it wasn't just our Goodwill, several other Goodwills, about 48, I think, in total around the country. They also received donations, as well as Goodwill Industries International. And so the Goodwill family got a great accolade through that investment. And I think it's a great nod to the work that we do as a nonprofit organization.
Yeah, and obviously when the news came out that she was making all these gifts, and a lot of educational institutions also benefited, and she gave a lot of colleges and universities monies, and so everybody was immediately scrambling and saying, how can we get in on this? How can we get money? But the crazy part is, right, there's nothing you guys did to other than just doing good work.
I'd like to say that we know exactly why she gave us the money. She never gave us a real clear indication why we landed on her radar screen and what it was ultimately about us that made her make that final decision. What I can tell you is that we do know that she did an extensive job of vetting who we are and what we do and our leadership team, and she got really familiar with us. I think she probably knows my shoe size. She got so detailed at some point, Dan. But I can't tell. I couldn't say exactly why. But what I can tell you is that I got a lot of new friends after that. My phone rang a lot, Dan, and I've had some folks that literally were calling, asking me to put me in touch with her, and I had to explain to them that I didn't get a chance to talk to Mackenzie Scott. I talked to her representatives, and they were great. They were extremely professional. But not a chance to talk to her. So I don't have her telephone number if anybody wants me to connect them. I can't do it.
Yeah, you mentioned that she didn't put any restrictions on how to spend the money. Have you guys even had a chance to talk about yet how you want to spend the money?
We've got meetings coming up. As you would imagine, we have a board of directors and we have a leadership team, and we're all individually giving thought to that. And we're going to put our heads together and ultimately make some decisions about how to invest it. The good news is, we were already giving thought to how we use resources that we have within Goodwill to leverage to help people. We had already made commitments as an organization and as a board of directors to get more aggressive in how we support people in Kentucky who utilize our services. And so there was already thought given to how to use resources. And now that money has come in, part of what we are now working through is where to spend it. We've determined that it won't go into overhead. The good news about us at Goodwill is that, we're financially stable enough that this money doesn't need to be used to keep the lights on. It doesn't need to be used to pay the expenses of our staff. We want to be really intentional about directing this right into programs and services that help people all around the state. And so we like to tell people it was an investment. She made a donation to Goodwill, but it was truly an investment in the state of Kentucky because we're going to turn this money right back around and help the people who really need it around the state.
Well, and I think that's why so many people love Goodwill and the work that you do, because it is an investment in the state and in the communities where you serve. And that says a lot about an organization. Along those lines, one of the things I know that you've been really proud and involved in is the Opportunity Campus that Goodwill has done in Louisville. Tell us a little bit about that.
Dan, I've done some really cool projects in my life, in my career. I've been very fortunate to do some pretty cool things. But I think this is the one I'm absolutely most excited about. I started at Goodwill on May 13th of 2019. On May 14th, our CEO came into my office and said that our board was interested in us relocating our headquarters and other operations to West Louisville, and asked if I could help find a location for us to move our operations to. And I said, absolutely, I can. So I went on the hunt to find some property, and we've since found some. For those who don't know, I'll explain. West Louisville is the city of Louisville's inner city. It's troubled with many of the inner city pathologies that you see around the country. High unemployment rate. Crime rate, unfortunately, is higher than it should be in West Louisville. Health disparities exist in West Louisville in ways that they don't in other parts of the community. Many of this, I hate to say it, many of the stereotypical issues exist in West Louisville that are prevalent and relevant in other communities, other inner cities. And so we wanted to be a part of the solution. And part of my career has been centered around finding ways to improve realities in West Louisville. So Dan, I live in West Louisville, and that's really intentional because I wanted to be a part of the solution and being a part of helping to improve the community. And I always felt like if I left, it'd be out of sight, out of mind. And so I was really intentional about planting my personal flag here in West Louisville And then when Goodwill determined that they wanted to be a part of the solution in West Louisville, I got even more excited, because for us, it means more than just moving a headquarters. I think people got excited when they heard that Goodwill was moving their headquarters to West Louisville, but the reality is that's not nearly as exciting as what we ultimately want to do in West Louisville. A headquarters is really just, your bean counters and your IT folks and folks like me who are not fun or exciting, moving into a community and working and going home at the end of the day. That's not, it does a little bit to improve the community, but it's not transformative. I don't believe so. What we're proposing with an opportunity campus is indeed transformative, because we've purchased 20 acres on Broadway, which is a highly visible, highly trafficked part of the community. And we're going to build an opportunity campus where we will bring our headquarters. We're going to bring a lot of our career services that help that population of individuals I told you about earlier improve their lives. But we're also going to create room and space for other nonprofits who also serve that population of people that we serve to co-locate on our campus with us at little to no expense to those organizations. We're going to use our resources to create a universe on the corner of 28th and Broadway in Louisville to improve people's lives. So they'll be able to go to one spot. They won't have to go all over town looking for all of these different ways and connecting to these different resources to improve their lives. They're going to get all of that in one space, and we'll be able to create this atmosphere, this universe, this space, this opportunity campus, where all of that will exist under one roof on one campus. And I think that, to me, is transformative. Right now, that 20 acres, Dan, is an old manufacturing plant that had been there for decades and decades and decades. It is a brownfield eyesore right now that unfortunately has about a 400,000 square foot manufacturing plant on it that has worked its way out of service over the years. And so it's downsized over the years. And so we're going to level that, transform that site, but not only transform the site, the hope is that we'll ultimately be able to transform the lives of the people around that community once all is said and done. So I'm really excited about that. This is once in a lifetime kind of a legacy project that I want to be able to drive by and tell my son, your dad did that.
Yeah, and you're right. That is a life-changing impact. And I can see why you would be proud of it. Let's talk a little bit about the time frame for that. How long is all this going to happen?
Dan, so the one thing that I learned in all the work that I've done over the years, especially the community engagement work, is that you don't try to work your way into a community without first engaging the community. And so while we have purchased the campus, we've purchased the property, we own it, before we build anything, before we commit to any design, we're going through a really intentional process that's going to take us through the first quarter of 2021, where we're engaging people in the community to get their feedback and ask them, what would you like to see done on this campus? How can Goodwill ensure that it will be a good neighbor? What do you think the community needs in order to to take a step forward in the way that it functions now? And so we're spending a lot of really detailed time talking to influencers here in the community, talking to businesses that exist, business owners that exist in the community, but also hearing from residents in the community. And COVID, as you would imagine, put a huge dent in our plans, because I was planning these town hall sessions where we could get hundreds of people together in one room and have some conversations where we'll be able to collect that data and use that in our design phase. Instead, a lot of what we're doing now is done digitally. So we've got an online survey. We've got a website that's called goodwillwestlouisville.com, goodwillwestlouisville.com. I'll say it again, where we've got an online survey people can take and they can provide us feedback. We've got information that explains at least the initial concept of this project, and it allows people to learn what we're doing and offer us feedback. I'm really excited to say right now, we've only had the survey out a few weeks and we've got about 700 responses so far. I'm hoping we'll get a lot more than that. There are about 60,000 people in West Louisville. And so we want to spend some time getting that feedback. And after we get that feedback, Dan, we're going to synthesize all of that data and determine what's been shared in that data that falls in line with our mission and our vision for that campus, and is really kind of in line with who we are as an organization. And then we're going to figure out what we can afford to do on that campus based on what they've shared with us. And then we're going to create a design that includes some of those things that fall right in line with what we like to see and what we feel like our purse strings will accommodate. And we're going to go full scale after that, building out a plan to finance that campus, and then building out the plan to design it itself, and get a lot more even aggressive at that point in engaging the community. So I don't think you'll see anything with the exception of a demolished site at the beginning of this first quarter happen on that campus. But it won't be until later this year, maybe even early next year, before you really start to see something come to life, because we want to be deliberate in doing this right and not rushing through the process.
Absolutely. Something this big, you want to make sure you take your time to do it right.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about before you got to Goodwill. You graduate from EKU in 1995.
Yes.
Tell us about where you went next and some of the stops you've had in your career.
Dan, I tell people my life, I'm like the Black Forrest Gump. I'm like the Black Forrest Gump. If you remember Forrest Gump had the coolest life experiences you can imagine, and he did nothing to deserve them. He just kind of stumbled into these really, really cool life experiences. Well, mine has been just the same. You know, I graduated from Eastern Kentucky University in May of 1995. And I had no idea what I was going to do the day I graduated. Literally, Dan, the day I graduated, I walked across the stage. Well, then it wasn't even your diploma. You kind of got the container for your diploma. I shook hands, walked off the stage. When I came off the stage, one of my communications professors, Dean Cannon, God bless his soul, he's passed on now. But Dean Cannon he always saw something in me, Dan, that I never saw in myself. And he said, look, DeVone, I know you don't have a clue what you're going to do with your life at this point. He said, but I got a friend who works at the University of Kentucky in the PR department. They're looking to hire someone. I told them you'd be perfect. He said, you go call this guy and do the interview and get this job. You take it and start your career. And that's exactly what I did. That is exactly what I did. And so Dean Cannon was responsible for me getting my first job in the public relations department at the University of Kentucky. And it was an incredible experience. I was there from 95 to 98 and was a spokesperson for the university. I had some amazingly cool experiences. I hosted and helped coordinate the press conference to announce Tubby Smith as the first African-American coach for the University of Kentucky's basketball program. I had some great mentors while I was there. I just had a really great experience, and I was nurtured by people who fortunately saw me as a young up-and-comer and gave me some really cool experiences that allowed me to grow. But interestingly, Dan, before I graduated Eastern, I was like many of my other colleagues on campus, my other classmates. We were broke. We didn't have any money. We were struggling. And I remember I had my two best friends in the world, still my best friends now, Jeffrey Qualls and Rodney Bussell. We had a 3-bedroom apartment off campus, and the rent was about, I think it was like $360 a month between the three of us. It was $360, and we struggled to pay that. I mean, we struggled to pay that. And I remember I got a job working the night shift at UPS sorting hub in Lexington. And so I would work my senior year. I worked at the Eastern Progress. I worked there and as the news editor, and it was a great experience with the staff there. But at night, I'd go work for the UPS and I'd sort packages. Well, when I graduated, I started working at the University of Kentucky in their PR department, and I learned that at that time they got paid once a month. Well, I was so broke I couldn't go a month without any paychecks. So Dan, the first month at the University of Kentucky, I worked from 8 to 5 p.m. at the University of Kentucky with a suit and tie on. I'd go home, I'd take a nap, I'd get up at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, I'd go to UPS, I'd sort packages from 11 to 3 a.m. in the morning. I'd go back home, I'd take another nap, I'd get up, and I'd go to the University of Kentucky, and I'd do it all over again. Well, after my first month of doing that, the University of Kentucky screwed up my first check. And they screwed up my first check, and they couldn't correct it until the next month. So I had to do it all over again for another month. Well, by the time the second month rolled around, I had gotten so accustomed to doing it that I kept doing it. And so I worked at the University of Kentucky from 95 to 98. And the entire time I was there, I also worked at UPS sorting packages at night from 95 to 98. So I'd wear a suit, do press conferences, talk with media from 8 in the morning to 5 p.m. And then I go put on my dingy, grimy boots and clothes and go sort packages at night. Well, UPS Airlines here in Louisville was expanding, creating their All Points International Air Hub that exists here in Louisville. Well, at the time, they were just making plans to build it, and they knew they were going to need to expand their PR department to help accommodate the need. And I don't know who, some way, somehow, someone here in Louisville learned that there was this kid in Lexington who had been working in public relations for 3 years at the University of Kentucky, who had been working for 4 years at UPS and understood UPS culture, and it was the perfect marriage. And so they reached out and thought it'd be a great opportunity, and they brought me to Louisville in 98. I came back to Louisville in 1998 and started working in PR here, and took off the grimy boots at night and slept through the day and slept at night for the first time in a long time. And so that's how I got my career started.
Yeah, well, and you've had a couple of stops since then, right? You bounced around a little bit.
I did. There was after that, I thought I was going to retire from UPS. It was a great job, great company, great colleagues, and just a really great early professional career experience for me. But I got recruited by an internet startup company called Darwin Networks. It was co-founded by Paul Allen, who's the co-founder of Microsoft. He and some other guys invested some money in this internet company. It was during the internet boom. Everyone was trying to figure out how to take advantage of it. And there was a company that had, fortunately, a lot of money thrown at it, and they were told to figure it out, and they needed someone to manage their external affairs, and they recruited me away from UPS. And I told people, I was still in my 20s, Dan, and it was, they threw this amazing salary at me. They not only threw an amazing salary, they threw an amazing budget. They told me, look, we're going to hire you. You're going to run this external affairs communications department. You hire who you want to hire. You run it how you want to run it. And I just, was this bright-eyed young professional who saw this huge opportunity and a chance to make some money. And I took it. And about 3 months into the job, I was absolutely miserable. I hated it. I hated it because I took the job for the wrong reasons. I did. It wasn't something that I had a real desire to do. It was, I was driven by just the idea of making some more money, and I'm not built that way. I need to be connected to the work that I do. And fortunately, I learned that lesson early in my career and made steps after that to align myself with those career opportunities that resonated. And so the company went belly up. I went off to another gig that was at GLI, our Chamber of Commerce here in Louisville, where, get this, you'll get a kick out of this, Dan. At EKU, I took one economics class, and I didn't do really good in that economics class, I'll be honest with you. Well, the kid who took one economics class at EKU became the economic development director for the city of Louisville. I became the economic development director and was exclusively focused on growing the economy in West Louisville. And, I learned it over time. I did it for 7 years, and I will tell you, it was a great experience. We grew the economy. We got new investments in the community. We created jobs for people in West Louisville. And so I got a chance to align my profession with a passion of mine. And it felt really, really good. And we did a lot of good there. So much good, in fact, that I started getting recruited by other communities to do the same thing around the country. And I got this really bright idea, Dan. Why not start my own consulting firm and support them all? And I did that. And I will tell you, it was an amazing experience for me. I got a really great, cool experience that allowed me to serve and support other clients around the country, some here in Louisville. And one of those clients just so happened to be Jefferson County Public Schools. Dr. Sheldon Berman was the superintendent at the time, and he had this really keen insight about building stronger relationships in the inner city for the school district. And he wanted me to help the school district do that. And so he recruited me and asked me to help do that. And I did. And he kept saying to me, DeVone, this works a lot better if you're on my staff full time. And I'm like, nah, life is good. I'm my own boss. I can do things the way I want to do them. Well, one of the other things I did on the side, Dan, was I hosted a radio show for 10 years on the weekends. And one weekend, the superintendent was my guest on the radio show. So he came in, and after the radio show, I took him on a tour of the community, and we talked for 4 hours, sharing our visions, insights, passions. And we realized we were so much alike and aligned in our desires to improve the community that he took advantage of that conversation and asked me at the end of it, come work for me. He called me at a vulnerable moment, Dan. And I said yes, and became the assistant superintendent of Jefferson County Public Schools, focused on external affairs at the time. And I did that for 4 years, and it was a great wild ride. The superintendent, unfortunately, got separated from the district, and leadership changed, and I moved on to something else after that and worked for a company called Rest Care Workforce Services, largest workforce services company in the country. We operated all around the country, and for 6.5 years, I traveled the nation helping companies build and establish workforce services programs that help their residents get to work and sustain workforce opportunities. And I did it. It was great. But after 6.5 years of traveling, it will wear you down. I was missing home, and this opportunity with Goodwill presented itself, and I jumped on it, and it's been a great almost 2 years so far.
Well, it sounds like all of the stuff that you had been doing was great training for what you're doing now at Goodwill. So it really worked out. And a plan always seems to come together like that. We do have some questions, and I've got several other things I want to talk to you about, the Saturday morning radio show included. But we have some questions, and I don't want our viewers to feel like we're ignoring them. So we have some questions from some of the folks. If we could pop those up. Steve, are you going to pop it up, or should I just read one from and you kind of answered this. Dale Morgan, one of our viewers, said, what has been the response from the citizens of Louisville so far to the Opportunity Campus?
There's been a lot of excitement. And mainly for those of you who are not familiar with West Louisville, again, it's an inner city that's wrestled with a lot of challenges and trying to build its economy and strengthen the residents who live in West Louisville. And unfortunately, over the years, West Louisville has been what I will say burned on a few occasions with some economic development projects. We were pursuing, for instance, a Walmart. There's no Walmart. There's no real large-scale retail that exists in West Louisville. And we've lost some pretty cool opportunities in West Louisville to build our workforce and economic infrastructure. And so when people saw Goodwill was willing to make that investment and commit itself to West Louisville, there was a lot of excitement there because they believe that it's going to help build some additional momentum in West Louisville. There's already some cool things happening. The Urban League is building an indoor track that'll be used for competitive purposes for races, regional races around the country that'll happen in West Louisville. There's some other developments that are taking place in West Louisville. So there's momentum building now that Goodwill has been able to be a part of that has created a lot of excitement. There's been some skepticism for people who are wondering, well, what's this really all about? And, will the community get a chance to have a voice in any of this? And, the more I get to talk to people and help them understand that this is not an attempt to usurp the community, to move anybody out of the way. It really is a real attempt on behalf of Goodwill to understand the community, to embrace the community, and make sure that the community is involved with establishing what ultimately will exist on this campus. Once they understand that, we get great deals of support. So right now, our council members are stepping up to support us. We're getting business leaders who are stepping in to support us. Elected officials are championing the work. So it's a really cool opportunity for Goodwill to do some good. And right now, fingers crossed, and we'll hope it stays that way, it's been really well embraced.
All right, Michael Earl Hayes says, through your roles with Goodwill and others, have you been able to partner with EKU to utilize student interns or co-ops for real-world experience?
We haven't here. I won't say that we haven't in other places. One of the things that's interesting you say that we're having conversations now at Goodwill with a plan built in 2021 to do more to engage interns. I will tell you, we just created an opportunity for some students at Simmons College of Kentucky, which is here in Louisville, which is where Goodwill is headquartered. So that makes it a little bit easier. But we have a store in Richmond, actually not too far from campus. And so, there may be some opportunities to do something right there in Richmond. We have another regional operation in Lexington, which is not too far from Richmond, that would maybe give us the opportunity to connect with some students there. But that's a real opportunity that we want to pursue. I think part of what we want to do initially, Michael, is kind of fine tune a process of engaging interns before really kind of rolling that out in a full scale model around the state. So we'll spend some time fine tuning that model before taking it to the state. But the long answer to that question is absolutely, we want to go down that pathway. And I've got a special preference for my friends at EKU in Richmond. So we'll make sure we tap them. And I will say that my colleague, Rena Sharp, attended EKU. I'm not exactly sure the year she was there prior to my attending EKU. And so we both have an affinity for EKU, and I'm sure we'll make sure we make those connections.
Well, and Dr. Cosby, who I believe is still the president of Simmons, is an EKU alum as well.
He is. I talked to him today, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm.
All right, next question is from Madeline Collins Willis, and she wants to know, what local nonprofits are you working with for this vision? Kentucky River Foothills, FAHE, valuable knowledge of the MPA program at EKU, especially when looking to revitalize and working with communities. So I think she's talking again about the West Louisville opportunity, the Opportunity Campus.
So right now we are on a listening and learning tour. Part of this, so it's really a sort of a two-phase process when you talk about the organizations. One is, going through this phase of, again, making sure we hear and listen to the community and include that into what we're seeing ourselves and determine what we believe the gaps are. Because for us, part of what we don't want to come in and do is replicate successful initiatives that are already underway. We want to identify, where are the gaps? Where can we plug gaps and create a more holistic approach to serving the community? So once we figure out what those gaps are that we can serve, and then figure out where the other gaps exist, we want to then identify partners who can fill those other gaps and start to build relationships with them and ask them, would you consider working with us, establishing MOUs, building sort of these coexisting relationships that would allow them to co-locate with us on campus. So we're in the early phases of that process, but we're talking to a lot of organizations. We weekly, literally weekly, there's another 1, 2, 3, or 4 that we're having conversations with. So they're mounting pretty quickly. And my hope is that we'll get a good, well-rounded list of those by the time we ultimately start making some decisions.
I know you grew up in Louisville. You're a Louisville native. How did you end up picking EKU and ending up in Richmond for your college?
So that's a great question. And it's one that I wish I could give you this beautiful answer that says that I was this, bright and insightful young kid who had it all together. But Dan, I will tell you, when I graduated from high school at 17 years old, and I remember not knowing where I was going to college, but knowing I was going to go, but hadn't made a decision. And I remember there was a college tour scheduled for the students at my school and the seniors in high school. And we were going to travel in-state and just visit the colleges within the state to determine, just to get a feel for them. Well, the very first school on that list was Eastern Kentucky University. And we went, Dan, on an overnight stay to Eastern Kentucky University on a Thursday night. You know what happens on Thursday nights, Dan, at Eastern Kentucky University? Some of
I
the
know what
best
happened back then. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily happen now, but it happened back then that way.
Exactly. Some of the best parties in the world. Literally, Dan, when I went the year that I selected Eastern Kentucky University as the school for me to attend, Eastern Kentucky was in the top 10 party schools in the nation. Literally. I mean, they ranked them some way, somehow. I'm not sure how they ranked them, but EKU was in the top 10 party schools in the nation. And I went and had an amazing Thursday night experience at Eastern. And I went home and I said, that's where I'm going to school. And I will tell you, I never visited another campus. I never went anywhere else. It was the one school I visited. I applied, and after I applied, that was exactly where I went. Look at my buddies there.
There you go. You know, as much as downtown, there's a lot of people who aren't proud of the downtown history. That's been one of our best recruiting tools at EKU back in the day. I mean, that got a lot of students to help them make their choice of where to go to college.
Well, I will tell you, Dan, I wish I could have provided a more insightful rationale for why I picked EKU. But, things have a way of working out because it really was probably, I think it was the best decision I could have made. I mean, it was exactly what I needed. It wasn't home. I got a chance to get away from home. So it made me grow up and learn how to survive on my own. But it was close enough that I could go home and get some leftovers if I needed to do that. It made me grow up. It exposed me to worlds that I wasn't familiar with. And what I mean by that was, I grew up in Louisville. I lived spent most of my life in West Louisville, but we moved to the suburbs when I started high school. And so, I was one of a handful of African-American young men in the community I lived in high school. And then I go to Eastern Kentucky University, and I believe the Black population of student population was a little higher then. But it was, majority white. And it was good for me to get that experience for me personally. I can't speak for anyone else, but for me personally, that turned out to be a really good life experience for me. It prepared me for a lot of the things that I eventually experienced in my professional career. And I think kind of gave me a head start on how to maneuver in the workplace as an African-American in a predominantly white environment. And so it was helpful for me there, but then it gave me some great experiences as a student. I built some amazing relationships, and it was exactly what I needed. So I loved it and still celebrate it.
You mentioned working on the Eastern Progress while you were a student. What were some other things, some other groups or some other activities maybe you remember from your college days?
Well, I was, I like, then I thought I was cool, but when I look back on it, Dan, I was really I was a nerd is what it turned out to be. I was a big nerd. And so I love to read. I actually worked at the library when I was on campus. So this was at a time, it was a much different time then. And we had stations at the entrance and exits of the library at the time. And we checked people's backpacks and checked their books before they left to make sure they were checked out properly and nothing was taken that wasn't supposed to be taken. And so my job was to sit and do that. I had some other jobs, but that was the main job, is to kind of be a traffic guy at the library. And I read a ton of books while I did. I just read books. So I was a nerd in that way. Played some interval basketball. I was sort of on the, I loved the interval teams. I played some basketball. But beyond that, truth be told, working at the Progress, people didn't realize it, but it was a real job. It was a real job. I mean, we only printed once a week, but Dr. Frost, Elizabeth Frost, Libby Frost, she ran it like a business, and she treated us like reporters at any other newspaper. And I was a reporter. I was the news editor, and I had to manage that like a real newspaper. And so it required me to manage staff. It required me to manage resources. It required me to manage a news budget and figure out how to do all of those things. And it didn't, believe it or not, allow for a lot of additional time outside of the committed time to make sure that the students on campus got a respectable newspaper every Thursday.
Well, and you earned a degree in journalism, and I know that you've been a contributor to the Courier Journal on a couple of occasions. You've done some writing for them.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is, the degree I got, I can't say this for all of my friends. My degree, I use it every single day. Journalism in English, and I've used it every day of my career. Maybe not as much when I was in economic development, but the reality was that job. One of the reasons I was able to find some success was because I learned how to communicate. And I think no matter what job you have, if you can be successful at communicating, you're going to be relatively successful in that job. And so I learned how to communicate, and that helped me find success in everything that I've done. But now in the job that I'm in, I use that skill set every single day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't use my skills, the skills that I picked up at EKU.
Here's another question for one of our viewers. Do you have any specific examples of incorporating diversity, equity, and inclusion in your workplace, and/or any advice? That's the top priority of my current position, coming in from one of our viewers tonight.
I've had a lot of experience, in leading and following, and sort of being caught in the middle of those two ends. And I will say we are in a really unique time as a country, as a state, as a city. We're wrestling through what I call growing pains. Our country is becoming more and more diverse. And the people who embrace that diversity are not at this point willing to put it on the back burner anymore. They want it prioritized, and I think the reality is the companies that learn to prioritize that, they learn to do it well, not only, I think, position themselves to have a healthier workplace in the long run. I ultimately think those are the businesses that are ultimately going to be the ones that survive in the long run, because you can look at the statistics. I've got a friend, Dr. Nat Irving, who's a futurist. He studies the future at the University of Louisville. That's all he does. And he and I talk a lot about the future. And I can tell you that the future is not black and white. It's just not. And, the reality is, though, there's still some people who will press against it, who maybe don't, there's some people who maybe I would suggest don't necessarily have a disdain for diversity, equity, and inclusion, but they haven't fully embraced it. I think partly because of an ignorance. It's something new that they have to learn, and a lot of us don't want to learn anything new. Some of them don't feel like they're equipped to lead it, and because they're not equipped to lead it, they just don't go down that path. But I will tell you that anybody who's attempting to do that work, it's not necessarily the easiest work, but it is absolutely worthwhile. So I will tell you at Goodwill, we serve an extremely diverse population of people. And we've been looking at our numbers and, the diversity that exists within Goodwill around the state. We operate in 103 counties in Kentucky. We have 1,500 employees who work for us. And I will tell you that that makeup, 1,500 employees, represents the racial makeup of the state in pretty accurate form. But we're even trying to get more intentional about making sure that we're not just hiring people that help us match the racial makeup of the state. We also want to make sure that we're hiring diverse vendors who are minority business owners. We want to make sure that we're serving a diverse population of people who need our services. We want to make sure we're partnering with nonprofit organizations that are being led by a number of diverse leaders who can speak clearly to issues that impact minority populations, because we feel like if we do that right, then ultimately we as an organization will be a better asset to the community. And so I don't think that it's always the easiest work to do, but I do think that it's extremely important and extremely valuable to commit yourselves to doing it. And if you're attempting to do that work and you're a leader at your organization and you are not comfortable in leading based on your experience around that topic, there are a number of people who have that expertise, who are consultants, and some who are not even consultants, but would be willing to share their experiences with you, who can help you navigate that terrain. I encourage you to reach out and ask them how to get started. It's worth it.
We're starting to get close to the end of our program, but there's no way I can let you off without bringing up Hip Hop Slop. Tell me about Hip Hop Slop.
Hip Hop Slop is a book that I wrote because I got extremely frustrated with how negatively influential hip hop music and pop culture in general was to a lot of young people. I was helping to lead the men's ministry at St. Stephen Church at the time. And we had 1,000 men who were part of this mentoring program. And we would take these young men, in most cases, who were being raised by single parent mothers, to these outings and spend time with them. And it became really clear and really evident that they were just greatly impacted by hip hop in some extremely frustrating ways for me. And they kind of found themselves removed from reality. And, in that process, I learned something about myself, Dan. My mother taught me something that I didn't realize was the case at the time. She said, all my life, anytime I ever got mad, I've never been a real fist fighter. I've never had a real fist fight in my entire life, Dan. But my mom says, anytime I ever got mad, I would write. And I started thinking about it. I didn't. And what happened was I got mad about that. And I started writing just these little op-eds that I'd send to this online entertainment website. And they published them. And I just kept writing and kept writing. I realized I'm onto something. And so I started writing it. And before I knew it, I had myself a book printed. And I tell people it was the little book that could, that book was published. And I didn't have any, expectations on what would happen, but it ultimately became required reading in college campuses all around the country. And it put me on a lecture circuit that had me traveling the country. I spoke on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. About the influence hip hop had. I did media rounds all around the country. That book took me places that I never would imagine. But, I tell people, again, who are watching, that book and my ability to write it really kind of home all the way back to EKU and what I learned there and how I learned to put a sentence or two together and an idea and a concept together. And so, EKU was highly influential in helping me get to the point where I could write that book. And, I'm working in 2021. I've got a few other books right now that I've started writing. So hopefully, the next time you and I talk, Dan, we can maybe talk about another book or two that I'm working on.
Well, that would be great. By the way, our buddy Rodney Bustle says that Hip Hop Slop is a classic.
Rodney Bustle. I didn't pay him to say it, but Rodney Bustle is my best friend in the whole world. Love him to death.
He's a good man.
He was my roommate at EK.
I do. Your book. I'm glad you're working on books because that gives us a reason to bring you back. We didn't get to talk about your transformation over the summer where you got lean, mean. Maybe not a fighting machine, but you got lean and mean. And I did want to talk more about your Saturday morning show, but we'll do that next time. We're out of time tonight. But DeVone, thank you so much for being here. I think everyone has enjoyed hearing. Like you said, you've had a great life, and you've had some great experience. And I know you're not done yet.
Not done. We got a lot more to go. Until then, though, go Colonels.
Go Colonels. Thank you very much, DeVone.
Thank you, Dan.
DeVone Holt, our guest tonight on the Alumni Spotlight Series. It's been great having him. He's currently serving as the Vice President of External Affairs with Goodwill Industries. I want to remind you, we'll be back next Tuesday night with the Colonel's Kitchen, 8 o'clock next Tuesday night, as we'll be cooking up, I think, some special cold weather food this time around. And then 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be back with our next Spotlight Series, Alumni Spotlight Series. Bill Kelly will be on to talk about his life and career as an actor and some of the roles he's had, including Bloodline on Netflix and some of the famous commercials that he has been in. But that will wrap us up for tonight. Again, thank you so much to Alex Hanovan and Steve Greenwell, who are making the magic happen behind the scenes. Thanks to DeVone Holt for being with us. Thanks to you for watching us. And until we're back again, go Colonels.